Now, your calls on Liz Truss saying she'll consider scrapping speed limits on motorways. Yup, it was last night. She said it. 0207 862 2222. Give us a call. She was speaking at the final leadership hustings last night, where she told Conservative Party members that she's prepared to look at introducing a German-style system of motorways where there are no speed limits, but where drivers face increased liability if they crash while travelling at high speed. Here, the speed limit on motorways is 70 miles per hour, but maybe you think, well, people don't obey that anyway. I don't know. What do you think, Nick, about this?
It should be increased, but there should be a limit. You know, Germany, in fact, is reducing the sort of the Autobahn where you can just put your foot down and go whatever speed. So I think there should be a sensible limit. 70 miles an hour was the maximum speed of a Ford Anglia, I think, in the late 50s, early 60s. Cars have come on massively. So I think we should have a speed limit, a maximum speed of about 85, maybe 90 miles an hour maximum. But that should fluctuate if there are inclement weather conditions. But just to say, go as fast as you want, but if you go fast and you're going to have an accident, well, the law is already in place. So it will be carnage on our roads. And I'm astonished, to be quite honest, that she's suggesting this.
It's very honest. It's come out right at the end.
Of road safety.
Yeah, right at the end of the leadership contest. It makes you think, what's going on? Let me just show you how far you can travel at different speeds. Because obviously, the ideal thing about raising the speed limit on motorways is that you can cross the country faster. So if we go right down to the south of England, start in Brighton, which is here on the coast, you can see our map of the British Isles here. And you start here in Brighton, and here you have your little tourer that you're driving in. What sort of car is that? That's looks like a Charan. It's a Range Rover. Okay, fine.
A Velar, I think.
It's a Velara.
Yeah.
Well, you know your cars. Okay, let's say you go from Brighton at 70 miles an hour. 5 hours, where do you get to? Here's the answer. You get all the way up to Newcastle, right? Newcastle upon Tyne. So you will have gone 345 miles. The advantage of the Liz Truss policy, though, if it becomes, is that you go much further if you go faster, clearly, so long as you don't crash. So if you go at 100 miles an hour for 5 hours, you actually end up over here, ready? Glasgow, right? Your Range Rover gets to Glasgow here. Now, if she properly takes the speed limit off completely and you go at 150 miles an hour, I can see Yasmin's eyes revolving at the idea. But you would go, I'll show you. If you start in Brighton, you go at 150, you go all the way up to Orkney, right? So you're off the top of the coast. Now, that's the reason for doing it, Yasmin.
Are you being serious? Are you being serious?
Well,
150 miles an hour. Look, this is Liz Truss. Do you remember at the 2018 party conference, she said speed limits speed limits should be increased, right? Now she's saying she wants to do, and I totally agree. I haven't a better way of expressing it than Nick, that this is madness. She just said,
well,
somebody asked her this question. Somebody asked us, Liz Truss will say anything to anyone at the moment and make any promise. What next? Somebody will say we don't want seatbelts. Will we go with that?
Well, look, if you've got an open road and you've got a big car, why shouldn't you be able to put your foot down?
Because you might crash and kill someone.
Well, that's the point of the open road, isn't it? You've
No,
got no one.
there are cars on that road.
Well, OK. Is there a road in the country where you can go at 70, we should be asking?
That's the problem, isn't it?
Well,
what is the average speed?
The idea you can drive in a straight line to the Orkneys without a traffic jam in between.
And not needing to fill up. What's your petrol consumption going to be? We're living in an age now where we're concerned with the energy prices. You know, if you're driving at 50 miles an hour, you have a reasonable return on your tank. If you're travelling at 150 miles an hour, you're probably stopping 5 or 6 times to fill up.
Do you think people should be able to drive at the speed of their age? In other words, a 19-year-old can only go at 19 miles an hour?
No.
Because most accidents seem to be caused by younger people.
Well, and a lot of older people as well.
Yes.
A lot of older people as well.
That's where my policy falls apart.
Yeah, so
you get people going at 91.
I just think it's...
We just need some sensible suggestions, and this, to be honest, it's harebrained to suggest we take uncapped speed.
Well, hang on, the Germans are not harebrained. The Germans have done this for years.
And they've reduced it.
Yes, but I've never seen a stat that says, oh, in Germany they have far worse deaths on motorways. I would imagine they have worse pile-ups.
They do.
But do they?
They do. I don't know what the stats
What,
are.
so-
But
but- so-
when they have a crash, if you have a crash at 150 miles an hour, you're a goner.
gone.
Wolf.
You're finished. If you have a
But
crash
you've also killed other people.
Yeah. Okay, so you're not... It sounds like neither of you are in favour. John in Norfolk, hello.
Good morning, Jeremy. I mean, I run a company called Spirit Motorsport that trains racing drivers, so I know a little bit about high-speed driving. What I was going to say is, what I tend to find when you're driving fast, your concentration level improves.
Yep.
So as your concentration level improves, you're actually safer. I never thought I would be saying this, but I actually agree with Liz Truss on this one. She's actually got it bang right. It would be a really sensible policy. If you look at Germany, they have actually a lower rate of fatalities per mile of motorway.
That's
or
what
Autobahn than
I
we do
think
in
that's the case.
UK.
And Nick, hang on, Nick says he's heard about lots of pile-ups. I don't know if you're right about that.
Well, look, I haven't got the statistics, but what I do know is the deaths are much higher. Per accident, the deaths are almost a certainty, aren't they?
Right, OK. Well, John, if you're going at high speed and something goes wrong, you're more likely to die than if you're going at low speed, obviously,
And Germany,
right?
and
Well,
Germany-
yes.
Yeah.
Yep, yeah, I accept that, but also because the concentration is higher, and it's also it does rely on the English public applying a bit of common sense, because obviously, if you're 3 a.m. in the morning, there's not much traffic around. You can put your toe down and make up the miles. Whilst rush hour on the M25, you're never going to be able to do 100, are you?
Yeah, you raise a very good point, Yasmin. The person who's driving 200 miles at 3 in the morning with nothing else on the road, why can't she go at 112?
Because even in country roads where there's nobody there,
talking
there
about
are other
motorways.
dangers. There are other dangers. And my thing is, okay, the fast driver will die or get very severely injured, but it's the other people who will
Yeah.
be injured. And that the responsibility of any prime minister is to the whole population, not just the fast car rider, although I hear what you're saying, Colin.
I mean, thank you very much, John, by the way, for your call.
Oh, John.
Yeah, no, sorry, Colin's next. I drive so little now, I've lost confidence. So I'm making the argument for fast driving. Actually, I must say, I do about 200 miles a year, I think, and I'm so conscious of the danger of the motor car, you probably won't disagree with this, Nick, that I take so much care. My wife says, can you please speed up?
Yeah.
But like, I'm going around the city at 15 miles an hour. So going at 100 blows my mind. Colin in Hertfordshire, did you used to be a traffic cop?
I wasn't a traffic cop, but I held an advanced driving certificate for many years in the police force.
OK. Oh, right, OK, so very close. What do you think of the idea of just saying, I mean, it would cut crime for a start, because there'd be no such thing as speeding if you brought this in.
Yeah. It's the most ridiculous idea I've ever heard of. If we go back to, and I think it was Barbara Castle who brought the 70-mile-an-hour speed limit in, back in the 1960s, I think. And if you look at the reason why it was brought in, it was because AC Cobra were testing race cars down the M1 at 4, 5 o'clock in the morning at 150 miles an hour. And although there wasn't any accidents, the speed differential between the lanes is horrendous. If you're in the middle lane of a motorway, let's say you're doing 65 miles an hour, approaching a slower car.
That's me, yeah.
You look in your mirror and there's a speck in the distance. And you think, oh, I've got plenty of time to overtake. Increase to 70. And before you know where you are, this car doing over 100 or 150 mile an hour is in the back of you. It happens as quick as that.
Yeah, well, you raise a good point. And I suppose also, I mean, there was an accident quite near where I live. You will have seen it, Colin. It was a shocker. It was on, I think, the M4. There may well be court proceedings. I won't say too much, but basically they were clocked at 120 miles an hour, and there may have been some racing going on. There was a fatality. There could have easily been people killed beside the road, and the people who do the crazy driving will be the crazy people, Colin, won't they?
There are very few drivers that are competent to drive in excess of 70, 80, 90 miles an hour.
Well, I would say in excess of 20.
If you're the son of a multi-millionaire, 17, 18 years old, pass your test, there's nothing to stop you buying a Ferrari straight out of the showroom, which is capable of nearly 200 miles an hour. And if you go down the motorway at that speed, and in relation to the German Autobahns, Nick is absolutely right. When they have an accident there, there might not be many, but when the Germans take their Porsches and Ferraris out of the weekend to blast down the Autobahn, when there's an accident, and it's normally one where the speed differential is not taken into account, the accidents that happen are absolutely horrendous.
All right, Colin, thank you very much indeed. And, of course, one thought we haven't even had yet is that this might raise everyone's insurance, by the way, because the insurance companies will be thinking, wait, if this car crashes at 110, we're going to have to do a massive payout. Lynn in Renfrewshire, hello.
Good morning, Jeremy. Good morning, panel. My point is it's not the speed of the car on the motorway, it is the way people drive on the motorway. People go into the middle lane, they sit at 60 miles an hour, they don't know what's round about them, and nobody seems to actually remember you're meant to drive as far over to the left as you possibly can. You're not meant to sit in the middle lane. That's not what if people drove properly on the motorway, then we wouldn't have half the bother that we've got, we wouldn't have half the pile-ups that we've got. People just don't know how to drive on the motorway. It's not the speed, it's the way they drive.
You wouldn't mind releasing the speed because you don't think that's the issue. Is that right?
I wouldn't say, I would say maybe take it up a wee bit, but I wouldn't say abolish it altogether. But if people actually drove properly, it needs an advert programme on the television to show people how to actually drive in the motorway, because half of them haven't got a clue.
Yeah, but a lot of these people are going in such strange position. I think they're acting as mobile traffic calming, because you can't get past them.
No, it's called lane hogging, and the problem is there's no police on our roads. So we've got robotic policing, and no one picks it up, and they're completely oblivious to what the highway code says about which lane they should be in. And for me, these people should all be prosecuted for for driving without reasonable consideration.
But the centre lane hoggers aren't the ones they're not driving aggressively, those people. They're actually stopping the speeders.
No, they're driving badly. They're causing frustration and they're stopping other people. If you sit in the wrong lane at 60, 65 miles an hour, it's not your job to police the road. It's your job to comply with the law. And you're not complying with the law. If someone
Is it against the law? To sit in the middle
absolutely. Lane? You're lane hogging. Yeah, of course. You stay in the near side lane unless you're overtaking. The moment you've overtaken, you move back to the near side lane. And we've got 4 lanes now, Jeremy. So we now have lanes 2 and 3 with lane hoggers. And they sit there at 55, 60 miles an hour, and they are oblivious, as Lynn said, to what's going on around them.
OK, there was that terrible crash about 15 years ago, the Selby rail crash. Anyone remember? I'm sure it was a driver. Do you remember that? He came off the embankment.
That was in, I think, 1999, wasn't it?
Was it?
I think that was in...
Well, we just had where I live.
So
that was on, fun enough, the same day that Sir Alex Ferguson's trial was.
Oh, that's interesting. The guy's name was Gary Hart. He took his car, it went down an embankment, it stopped on a rail line, a train hit it. It was terrible.
Well, do you
remember there was an accident with a Range Rover? A young gentleman allegedly was doing over 100 miles an hour and a 30 limit and ended up on the track. It was a 24-year-old gentleman. 1 fatality, 1 lost leg.
Okay.
And the
well, we
police
just had the most dramatic one, and again, allegedly speeding young man in Park Royal who ended up on the...
I mentioned it. 120, yeah.
That's the one
I'm talking about. That's the one that happened to me.
You're talking about Selby?
No, I started with Selby, but you've mentioned the one
that's the one I'm
that was
talking
this
about.
week, yeah. And it was 120. But under the Liz Truss policy, if it becomes a thing, it would be legal to drive at that speed.
That wasn't a motorway. That was a 30-mile-an-hour restriction.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was the M4.
The one I'm talking about was... well, then there's another one. There was another one with a 30-mile-an-hour restriction. Yeah. He was doing 100, ended up on a rail track.
Incredible. Lindsay in Hampshire, hello.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Well, we're almost in the point where we're arguing for the speed limit to come down now. What do you think?
Oh, and I wouldn't argue for it to come down. My partner is an HGV driver on the continent here, and I've seen, it's only because I've known him for 13 years, I've really appreciated it's not just the speed limit on the motorway, it's the people who join it, it's the slip roads as well as everything else. People don't realise, and I agree with your last corner, let's have advertisements on. We had them for COVID. Let people know that it's, 200 yards stopping distance for an HGV driving at 55 kilometres an hour. People join the motorway and they see a lorry and they think they can slip in front of it. Everyone else has gone into the middle lane. The lorry has nowhere to go.
Yes.
And people, my partner has sat in many a queue seeing an appalling deaths and collisions. I feel I'm a far better driver having known him, because always am cautious when I enter. When I see a slip road, I go into mid lane because the lorries are coming on. Middle of the night, lorries there as well.
All right,
So
but hang on, we're talking about speed limits here. Would it not be? Look, I'm making the argument. Okay, the Truss argument.
Yeah, go on.
It's okay. I'll try this. Okay, the clown coming in from the slip road who's misjudged it, and your husband's on over his right shoulder. He's got to put his foot down because he's got to get away from your husband's truck. He's got to be allowed to go at 110 because then he can accelerate out of danger.
But then the person in the inside lane may not see that and may pull in, and at that speed, you can't necessarily respond as quickly as you would if you're going, say, at 70 or 80 miles an hour.
No, fair enough.
And I think people just don't realise that the other traffic on the road has to work at different speeds, and they just don't see that.
I hear you. Thank you very much, Lindsay. Paula in Dumfries, hello. Hi, Paula in Dumfries. Oh, we just lost you. Do you drive a lot? Yeah, presumably with your arm, you can't.
I can't drive at the moment.
Is that a release or is that frustrating?
Oh no, frustrating.
Yeah.
But I'm walking a lot more, which is good. But I must say, we must, it was Barbara Castle who also brought in the seatbelt. Mm-hmm. She did an amazing amount of work on making driving safe.
Sure, but yeah, although we all complain about road danger, 1,700 people a year die. My understanding is that if you go back 60 years, it was twice as many. Yeah. And there were only 10% of the number of cars on the road.
Yeah. Well, our cars are much safer.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, yeah.
With their airbags.
Until they hit a child,
brakes.
then we'll start. Paula in Dumfries is there. Hi, Paula.
Hiya, Jeremy. I was in a car accident roughly 6 weeks ago on the M80 just north of Glasgow on the motorway, and the traffic, I was in the fast lane, and we were going roughly 40 to 50 miles an hour. Now, the cars in front of me came to quite an abrupt halt, and I stopped. But unfortunately, the guy behind me, who wasn't paying enough attention, drove right into the back of me, forcing me into the car in front. Now, he must have been going 50 or 60 miles at least. And my car is completely damaged at the back and all over the front. Now, my worry is after a lot of years of driving motorways, that if they put the speed limit up to where there's congestion on motorways, there's going to be far more accidents. And if they'd been going faster, I'd have been seriously hurt.
Well, I think we'd probably all agree, if you've got a line of traffic that's stopped and this person who's half a mile out doesn't see the brake light, and he's doing 120, we don't even want to think about it. You're right. But then you've got to wonder why Liz Truss has suggested this. Does she not see that that's a possibility, Paula? What's going on here?
Yeah, because I think in all honesty, it's made me a far nervous driver when I see anybody at the back of my car now.
Yeah,
and it would really put me off driving if I thought that they could drive at whatever speed they like.
Well, I'm glad you're in one piece. I would just say I'm doing some editions of a quiz show at the moment, and we had some people who were from the Spinal Injuries Association a couple of days ago that we were filming with. 4 contestants. 3 of them were wheelchair users, and 2 of the 3 had broken spines as a result of cars. So, and that's kind of what you'd expect in a way in our society. We have a level of road danger we accept. Thank you, Paula. I'm so glad you're walking and talking still. Louise in Ayrshire, hello.
Hello. What was I going to talk about? It wasn't the motorways I was going to talk about. It's the roads up Scotland, up to the north. Okay. They're blaming lorries for all the accidents up there. It is not, because I've got friends who have been up there with lorries and driven up there with lorries and what have you, going at a special speed. If they put the speed, the people now are wanting to pass the lorries in good road and the roads up there, and they think they can pass a lorry at any speed, and there's somebody coming round the corner or whatever on the road, and they're dead.
I know. Well, listen, I've driven on those roads. I mean, they're unbelievably beautiful, but you do get these 2-lane roads with a quite long, in not massively populated areas. You're behind a truck and someone thinks, I'll just go round, and they misjudge it, and it's horrible, isn't it?
You need the power in your car to get by safely.
Well, the power, yes. Well, there is the thing.
If you have the power in the car, you get by safely.
Or you can just wait. That's the other thing, I suppose.
You'll be waiting forever.
You'd be waiting forever.
Yeah. That's the
All
problem.
right.
That's the problem.
Okay, thank you,
People
thank
don't
you, Louise. We don't know what Liz Truss was doing. Was it a policy announcement? Was it just on the hoof? Can we go to a situation in this country where we go above 70, 80, 90, 100? Thank you for your calls on this. We'll move on now.